on this, and we'll pop over here and we'll see how we go. I've got a few of us here tonight. We're, of course, on week number 2, as I mentioned before I started numbering at 0. And so this is week number 2, 8/22/17. This is a session, and this is the live class session. We're going to go about an hour and a half, 2 hours tonight. And then, of course, as usual, I'll round off the other 2 hours with supplemental lab section, as well as another supplemental lecture, just to kind of keep us up on where we are. We can pop open. We're over here in the modules area, and you can see we've got some uploads we'll be working on, and you've got Perelson, the case quiz that was due today, as well as the exam, and then the follow-up. And I asked you to choose one of the cases from chapters 1 through 3. And I had a download here for you, looking at the Salon case using that Simplex LP. You could look at it. We remember we spoke some about that, and we took a look at the optimizer, and I've got some other resources there for you on optimization and using the solver. And I also wanted to this week to kind of highlight a little bit of what's going on out there in terms of what we call this convergence of databases and spreadsheets. And you'll remember at the very first of the course, I talked about the fact that information technology is decision-centric, and two things have emerged essentially as our main tools in using IT to make better decisions. And that decision-centric, that idea is really exemplified by what we call business intelligence that feeds into company strategy. That, of course, that helps the company solve its mission. And you'll see here I've got a highlighted Tableau. Tableau is one of those tools that's emerging that combines the best of creating visualizations, and we talked about that, creating data visualizations, crunching numbers, and yet gives us some of the best aspects of a database. And we talked about how that database worked, the idea of a database, and we're going to go into this further as we get deeper into the course, this notion of the analytical cube, and some other concepts that I think are useful to take a look at. And one of them is the network effect. As I've mentioned before, we talked about the fact that IT has changed and has all opened up some business models. And one of them is the network is a business model that's based on the network effect. And the most obvious, of course, is Facebook. Twitter is another. Instagram is another. The notion that as that network grows, it becomes more valuable because there are more eyeballs and more people involved. And there's nothing. Actually, there's nothing really new to that. If you think back, you can look back and see that back throughout the history of business, the past 30, 40, 50 years, there have been all types of networks that were developed. For example, I'll give you one would be kids who would get involved in things like the Mickey Mouse Club. I remember as a kid, I was a member of the Mickey Mouse Club. You sent off 50 cents or something, and they sent you material, and there was a network involved, and the idea was to get you in front of the TV, etc. Another is the long tail effect, and that's another of those ways that technology has changed things. And one of those ways it's offered some business models. The long tail effect says that we can operate from the notion that with the internet, with this ability to connect people all over the world, that we can build platforms and we can sell specialized, customized products. And we're seeing that more and more. And of course, the long tail effect is demonstrated the most in terms in Amazon, who does more sales on the long tail. And this is those products are kind of out on the fringe or customized, maybe rare books, things of that notion that's really where they do the bulk of their business. Some of the other things I wanted to point out here is we've talked about this, is this idea now that we're embedding computers, or we're embedding chips that report data back to a cloud computer. And this idea of computer wearables, this is a resource that looks at what L'Oreal's done. And here is Best Wearable Tech of 2017. And then again, looking at some of these trends, some things about Netflix, this notion of people who binge watch, who want to stream programs live on demand, and then then here I think is a very interesting resource for you to look at when things sometimes don't work out. At one point, at the start of the internet age, I guess if you would want to call that the internet era, which is probably around 1992, 1993, Yahoo was the big dog on the block. They were the #1 search engine. They were the #1 landing page, and they lost all of that. So this is an interesting look at an attempt to renew them and what happened at Yahoo. Here's an article about where Verizon purchases Yahoo, and so look at that. Verizon, of course, the phone companies, the television network companies, the recording companies, folks who are in the movie business are all trying to figure out this new world that they have, that the internet has opened up. And we've talked about that. And you'll hear me say that that's a recurring thing, because that, what we would call disaggregation. Let me stop for a moment and talk very quickly about that. We know that historically, that in any industry, okay, that what occurs is that there will emerge eventually about 3 to maybe half a dozen firms that will have 60 to 70% of the business. In other words, things just tend to work themselves out to where we end up with an oligarchy kind of an oligarchy set, 6, 7, maybe a dozen firms that really control the market, have the market share. And although the Department of Justice, the United States government is pretty keen on on trying to stop people from creating monopolies, we just see this happen. And the reason is that you're just going to have some companies that emerge and do well and will run out their competitors. If you look at, and I'd say, if you look at professional sports, for example, let me give you a really good example. I'm a big baseball fan, okay? And in professional baseball, there are 2 teams that between them have won almost, goodness, I don't know, 45 or 50% of the World Series championships. Those would be the New York Yankees, okay, and the St. Louis Cardinals. Between them, they've won 39 World Series, okay? And there's probably a third team. I'd say, I guess it would probably be the Dodgers. Maybe I'd have to look at to see. But you're going to find, and you'll find the same thing in professional sports. You have these teams that are just kind of dynasties, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But this is something that we watch and we see. And Schumter in the text talks about this notion of creative destruction. It's just a process, and we just see that cream rises to the top. The best companies do that. Here's an interesting article talking about Amazon and their approach. One of the things that's a little bit different about these technology companies is that they're not as wedded to the business, to the business, the prevailing notion of the business model. And here's what I mean. Most of the large corporations in the United States, their CEO, their executive suites, their CEOs are people who have learned and come with an approach that the business, the purpose of the business is to increase shareholder value. And so they're very sensitive to the market. They're sensitive to earnings estimates and how well they do or they don't. They're very sensitive to what the people on MSNBC say about them, etc. Okay, and we just saw this play itself out with this situation dealing with the White House, and they had these councils, these people who got upset, saying, we're going to lose customers if we don't disavow and move ourselves out of this. So the tech company people are not like that. They tend to think on a long-term basis, primarily because the great tech companies right now that exist, and that would be Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, though Google, they are still populated by the people who were there when the company started. So they're in that stage. And you remember, I think I've talked with you before about the stages of evolution and revolution in companies and how they grow and change over time. And those, like Amazon's owner, he's the same guy. And so he's saying he's in it for the long run. Zuckerberg at Facebook has said the very same thing. So we see this approach where they just basically say to the investors and they say to Wall Street, do what you want to do. We're gonna continue on. And to give you a great example, Amazon for years lost money, but their stock kept going up because people saw in that business model real value. And here's a source that you can go look at, Amazon and their performance at Google Finance. You can look and see their performance. I also think it's good for you to go over and take a look at something like that so that you see a dashboard. And it's the same thing at Yahoo Finance. And a piece of this, and one of the kind of themes, and we've talked about this, is how do I take data, translate it into information, that is data that's valuable for making decisions, and then how do I display it, okay? And so the whole idea of business intelligence really boils down to what data do I need, how do I get it transformed into ways that I can use for decision making, and then how do I display it for the appropriate end user, okay? That's really what that boils down. And those things together are that notion of the peopleware, software, and hardware, that combine or synergize to make a company effective at what it does. So I have those resources there for you to look at and to follow along with some of those things. Now, before I go any further, I want to stop here just a second. I want to recognize some of the folks who are with us. If I can get everybody to show up here, try to do that. There we go. And Dimitri, glad to see you here. I've got someone else, 405 number. Dylan, Nancy, Zach, glad to see you here. And owner, and maybe that's not me, whoever you are. And so welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. As you know, these sessions are not required for you to be here, but I certainly do appreciate you being here. And I hope that you find them worth your time. And of course, this is recorded, so you can always go back and take a look at what you would like to look at, what you might want to review. I want to pop back up here for a minute and just spend a little bit more time before we move on talking about this process of optimization. And optimization is a mindset where a manager says, I'm going to work with what I've got and get the most I can out of what I have. And I'm going to try to see how can I take combinations of resources and put them together given the constraints that I have to operate. And I would really encourage you to take a look at those. This isn't a course in management science, but there are a lot of resources out there on solver and an optimization. In fact, I've had a couple of you send me emails, say, hey, you played around with it, it's interesting. And remember, when you go into Excel, okay, which is kind of a model for all other spreadsheets, just like Access is a model for all other databases. If you go into the what if section and you click on data, then you go what if, and you'll see goal seek, where we change a variable, the scenario manager, where we take several variables or pieces of a pro forma, if you will, and then the optimizer, where we look for a target, we build some constraints, and we make a decision on the relationships of variables. Are they linear, which is the simplex, okay, where we assume, for example, if interest rates go up, that housing sales go down. Are they nonlinear, okay, or are they what we would call evolutionary? We don't know. We just run the numbers enough times to see if we get some type of solution. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that, because it's important to understand that with the technology that we have, and as these technologies develop, as we get things like Tableau, and we see improvements in Microsoft Excel, we move to a point where where we see that decision making is not a binary exercise where I'm right or I'm wrong, okay? But instead, our decisions really flow along a continuum, say like a bell curve, where we can make some really disastrous decisions or some really good ones, but we hope we can make enough that are just, pretty good, that we can survive and go forward. And so we look at the range of decisions. I spoke with you before about when I worked, mergers and acquisitions, where before we had spreadsheet tools, it would take us months to build up maybe 4 or 5 scenarios. Once we got spreadsheet tools, we could run 50, 100 scenarios and say, well, if this variable changes or that variable changes or these sets of variables change. And so that we understand that decision making is a continuum, that the outcomes of decisions run along a continuum. They're not binary. And I teach the business policy course, and I emphasize that with my students all of the time. Every single decision we make is really is the outcomes flow from one of any number along a range of possible outcomes. What our job is to say, okay, given my resources, given the risk profile I've adopted, and resources meaning constraints, what are the most likely outcomes? And you could take something like Solver and you can run hundreds and hundreds of simulations and start to take a look at how things will work themselves out. So some interesting things for you to think about there and to take a look at. I hope you'll look at these resources. You do know, of course, that I don't test you over over this stuff. Okay. What I do though is I challenge you as a business professional, as someone who's earning an MBA, to say, okay, I'm going to take it upon myself to explore and to look at these things and to talk about it and to study them. And I'm going to take it upon myself to take a look at the New York Times business and technology sections. So the same thing with the LA Times, The Economist, a Harvard Business Review online, MIT, Sloan Management School, their online publications, and Business Insider is another one of those. The Wall Street Journal, obviously. And I'm going to go on Amazon, for example, and I'm going to look for books on management, or I'm going to look for books on marketing, and I'm going to see, what are people talking about out there? What are the finest minds thinking about? You see, this is what will take you and elevate your game from just a regular employee to an employee who thinks like a business owner, okay? And an employee who also is aware of what's going on in the outside world. And so this is an important thing for you to just make it a habit, because from here on out, as a manager, even as a business owner, you're paid for what's in your brain. You're not paid for how fast you are, or how strong you are, or how you know how many loads of whatever you can carry, or how you're paid for your brain power. Okay, and that means you've got to hone it and work it just like a professional athlete works out year round and has a workout when they're off season. There is no off season for us. So this is really important that you build that habit, okay? And you say, okay, if I'm working in a certain industry, I want to know everything I can about that industry, okay? And that's important for you as a business professional, because what it does is it starts to open up your mind to the range of possibilities, okay, of how you see your business and how you see your customer. And I can tell you, one of the things I tell my students is, anytime you deal with a company with its strategy, one of the biggest problems they have is figuring out what business they're in. And you would be really surprised. Then another problem they have is trying to figure out who are their main competitors. And I can take who I work for example, Oklahoma Baptist University. I continually ask my colleagues, what business are we in? Okay, what is it that we do? And what is it that we may have to do in 10 years to stay relevant and stay viable? Okay, and the idea that I'm here broadcasting, okay, is completely rare, because 25 years ago, you come to us for the lecture. Now we bring the lecture to you. So you see what I'm talking about. Well, I also want to go ahead and let's pop over here, and I want to close this up for a second. Let's go over to the syllabus section, because I want to make sure that we're all up to stuff on what's due and what's going on. And today, of course, we had 3 assignments. We had the case 1 follow-up, okay? And I'll be interested to see how we did with those. And then the case quiz, and then the exam on chapter 2 at Perelson. And again, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing how we did on those case follow-ups. The quizzes, they are what they are. Now, as you'll notice, on the 29th, which is next week, you have another case quiz, another exam, and then on the 31st of August, okay, you have a case 11, Lake West University, okay, and that one's due. We're going to spend some time tonight taking a look at Lake West University, and we're going to see how this process works, where we take data, we transform it into information for decision making, and then we display it in a way that makes sense. Well, even before we do the display, we build a set of queries or information specifications that we want, and then we display. And once we've had that displayed, we have our dashboard. And once we have the dashboard, we can begin to feed into measures or benchmarks, whatever we may have out there, milestones that feed into company strategy that eventually feed into mission. Okay, so that's, again, this Excel case. And we're going to see, again, how we use Excel. And we use Excel, and we use some database functions in Excel to take simple counts, okay, and turn them into higher level data. Let me stop for a moment, and if you've had a statistics course, you'll plug into this real fast if you haven't. We know that there are basic types of data, okay? One of them is what we call nominal or categorical data. It's data that we count. Okay, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm an independent. Okay, I'm a Baptist, I'm a Catholic, whatever. Okay, I'm an Oklahoman, I'm a Texan. So we count. Those are data that we count. And then the next level of data are what we call ordinal data, greater than or lesser than. Okay, there are two glasses and one has more than the other, and that's what we call ordinate. You think that word ordinate, which is the root of the word coordinate, and you kind of get that feeling of up and down and across ordinate data. Then we have what we call interval data, and interval data are data that are infinitely divisible, okay, and that also demonstrate scale for us. And money, for example, is interval data. But the ultimate type of data is what we call ratio data, and those are data in which we have a true absolute zero. Folks in the physical sciences tend to work with ratio data. There's an absence of heat, there's an absence of cold. They have an absolute zero. We don't really have that in business because we know you can be in negative territory. You don't want to be, but your bank account can be overdrawn. Your company can be losing money. So we tend to work with interval data. So what we're going to see here is how we take data that are essentially counts, okay, and we convert them into a higher level of data so that we can analyze them and then display them. Now, the case for Lake West University is, it starts over there on page 67, and you're out there. I hope you'll have your textbook with you, okay, because I want to talk about it a little bit. And in this case, we're going to work with some familiar and then some not so familiar kinds of functions in Excel. One of the things you're going to see, and one of the things that makes this just such an attractive case to me, is that it utilizes conditional formatting, okay, to help us identify or spot data. And if you go on, if you watch the weather, for example, rarely will you ever get a weather map that will, if you see temperature, you'll see bar charts when they give you a forecast, but if you're looking at the weather real time, you'll get thermals, okay, because people understand that. Yeah, and we saw that last week, last class session, I think, where we looked at that storm that went through New York City. Well, we're going to see it Lake West. So we talked about this some last time about how we have this use of conditional formatting to help us spot a pattern. And again, we're going to work with three different count functions. The count A, and the count A is it counts the number of cells that are not empty, okay, and any arguments. And then we have what we call the count if. And that means if a cell meets a certain condition, we count it. And then we have count if S, which means if we have a cell that meets two or more conditions, then we count it. Okay. We're also going to see the idea of an array, a table of data from which we pull information. So we'll see that. Now, we'll go into the files over here. Okay, and again, you can take a look up there in page 67 in the workbook, and you'll see also some nesting functions. They talk about the if function, pivot tables, templates. Those are some of the worksheet skills that they work through. Now, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do a quick search for Lake West. I'll just do the little count for Lake. And there we are. And these are the three files that we're going to work with. Lake West solution. This is a guide, okay? And this is a PDF that explains to you, and you know, it's handwritten, okay? So I think I'm fairly legible. But you know, if we were in class and I was on a whiteboard, I'd be writing the same thing. I saved this for you so you could see how this is put together. And I summarize a lot of what's there in the textbook. And I try to give you some explanations of it. And to see also how we design this really what Lake West is we're designing and building a dashboard. And then here's the Lake West raw data. And you'll recall, and you'll see this over on page 68, down in figure 1, we have this data that all these students have been given a quiz or an exam, and we have their answers on 10 questions. Of course, there's a correct answer. And then we have the student number, and we have their major, and then their classification, and we have them in a given section. And we'll just open that up for a minute. It's going to be easier for you to just go ahead and download this to your machine. Okay. Now you say, okay, what should I upload for credit for the workshop? And obviously, what I want you to upload is we'll enable the editing there. Okay. And let me downplay this. Let me diminish this. The Lake West solution, that's the one that I want you to upload. And we'll go back up here for a moment, and you can see here, and there are 5 sections. You can see it's divided. Now, once you start to see, then you remember we've talked about this notion of an analytical cube, and you should, and this will help you start to understand what I'm talking about. Here are 10 questions. Okay, these are one dimension. Each of these questions asks students to respond to some question that feeds to instructional objectives of some kind. So we've got these questions. So that's one dimension. Then we have another dimension, okay, which is the classification, that is, are they are they freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior? Okay. Then we have another, that is their major. And then we have their section. So you can see we have that. You can see that when we talk about that, and you go back and you look at those course resources and you look at that analytical cube, this will make more and more sense as you start to say, okay, I'm trying to build a more cohesive picture of a set of transactions, or of a transaction, or to take a report and get more from it. And that's why we use the term data mining. Or people also say, you know, when we work with these, we're doing slicing, and we're doing the slice and dice so we can run specific queries from the data and pull them. So this is a table. Okay, I could take this table and I could go ahead and import it into a database, and then start to run some queries and so forth. I can mimic some of that working with some of the tools I have here, like the sort and the filter, as you can see over here. And that's, again, these are just the raw data, and you'll want to just take a look at them. And frankly, what this is, if you want to play around, for example, if you really want to play around with pivot tables, this file is a fantastic little template to use to play around with. Now, I'm going to close this off, and we're going to look at the Lake West the Lake West solution. And like a dummy, I opened it up instead of downloading it. So I'm going to close that off, and let's download it. Okay, and this is what you'll turn in, okay, for your assignment. Now, let me stop for a minute. We'll make sure we enable the editing, and then you'll want to save this to your desktop. This workbook, okay, I encourage you to keep it. Number one, you've paid for the course, you've paid for the textbook, and so it's there for you. But it's also these are good models to keep. And I'm one of those people that says, if I find something that works, you know, why fix something that isn't broken? So if you have this tool and you want to see, well, how would I do this? Or what you have are some templates that you can plug other data into, okay, and work with them. And I'm really a believer that if you're really experienced using Excel and worksheets, and this is old hat to you, then take this stuff and expand it. If it's new kinds of stuff to you, or you haven't had that much experience on the other end of the continuum, this is a chance for you to kind of reverse engineer and see how some of this is done. Now, I want to go ahead and start us out. Let's just go through the workbook, okay? And the workbook starts with a summary area, okay, where we have all the response summaries. And again, the PDF, I summarize for you all of these. But and I want you to notice, again some design principles that we've got going on. First of all, look at the toolbar, okay, and you'll see that a good technology, a good IT has breadcrumbs or some kind of a gauge or not a gauge, but some type of feedback that says, here's what you're doing. And this shows you the font, the size of the font. Is it bold? Is it italic? What is the what's the alignment that's arrayed? I can click down here and see the color of the font, etc. Okay, and so when you see something like this, you can start to get a sense of how those breadcrumbs work. Now, if we click down here, you'll see we have a response summary, and I'm just going to click on it. And notice something again. Right here, the font is at it's at a Calibri 14. And remember, when we design a workbook or we design a dashboard, we always, at least in the Western culture, we start with the top, okay, and then we begin to work people down to the middle, and we might start at the top and then go to the left. But we work people down eventually to a center point of some kind, or to some kind of summary area. So if you look at this, and if you want to kind of get a feeling of this, come down here, okay, and go down to the zoom bar, okay, and zoom it out, okay, as far as you can take it out, and you'll see what I'm talking about, okay. And you keep zooming it out. And then you could see the whole thing. In fact, we'll zoom it back up just a hair so you can see the top. There you can really see how the thing is created. The summary, here's some output using conditional formatting, and down here's the data table, and then here are some response tables. But you can see how this flows down. And we're pulling the data up, and then we flow it down, and then we use the conditional formatting to let us look for patterns. And you can look at this scale. Okay, you can see there's a pattern here in these answers. There's a pattern over here. So again, this is the zoom lets me put this into some perspective and pull it out. But you can see what I'm talking about. Down here, of course, is the data table. So we'll bring it back up to scale. And you can see that a little bit better. If you look over here, for example, in the correct response percentages by major, you can see some patterns, and we put a criterion there to alert us that if the data in a cell don't meet a particular criterion, we're alerted. And that's not much different than in your car. My car, for example, has a little gauge that says, okay, here's the speed limit around here, and if I'm going over the speed limit, which I typically am, unfortunately, it turns red. It has a little thing that it shows people, someone behind me is too close, that goes red. I've got little things that you probably do in your cars, a little thing in your mirror, that if a car is getting close to you, it shows a little yellow thing that flashes. I asked, how did I drive, as many years as I drove, and not have any terrible accidents without having this technology? Well, that's just part of that notion of a dashboard to give me a visual cue, and you can see them here. Now, where you go and you have business intelligence is when you say, wow, is there a pattern here? Okay, and if I look at, and I'm over here, I'm right here in this correct response by major. Do I see a pattern? Is there a pattern? And I might say, okay, I'm going to look for anything vertically. Because if I see something vertically, that's about a question. If I see something horizontally, that's about a major. Is there a particular major that has a bunch of scores that are lower than they ought to be? Because if they're red, that means they're below the criterion, okay? And I think it was 70% of them get it right. Well, there's a pattern. There's a pattern here, okay? And we can see this. And again, and you can see there's a pattern down here as well. And again, you know, I've shared, I think we looked at mapping and ArcGIS Esri, and why mapping has really started to come into its own, because mapping is a way that we add layers. And literally when we see a map, let's say you see a weather map on TV, okay? What you're seeing is a database with a series of layers or queries run over them, okay? And when you next time go to the Weather Channel and you'll see a little thing that says layers, those are really just queries, okay? Well, give me all the rainfall in this area that's in my map. What's the wind speeds? On and on and on. And then you can even get a slideshow when you press the thing and it gives you future and shows you what things are going to look like in 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, whatever. Okay? Same principle here. Well, let's pop this on up, because this University Lake West is doing some assessment, okay? And they're trying to figure out, okay, how are we doing? Let's go up here and take a look. And again, we have this notion of displays and settings and so forth. And we've got this response summary, and we have it by section, okay? And notice that, and again, I also want to point this out. You'll see here's the font. This font level is at 11. This font level is at 14. This font level is also, this is at 11. This is also at 11. So they've taken it from 14 down to 11 and kept it at 11. So you have, and if you have more layers, and I think we talked about this some last week, you'll want to go from, I think it was Tamika's tanning salon, where we went from a font in the 20s down to one into the mid 10s on down. But that gives you that look. And notice we also have the borders, okay? And we use the borders for totals or summary level data. And now, you remember I had talked about we're going to convert these data. Now the data here in these counts and in the totals over here, and we'll move this over just a little bit more. Let me bring this down just a hair. Bring it up just a little bit. And you'll see the totals. These are counts. You say, well, what are you talking about? We're going to convert these to higher level data. Well, we're going to do that by calculating a percentage. So we're going to take these counts and turn them into interval level data, so that we can have some way to compare them, or some way to compute rate, or to look at a ratio. Now I'll show you. Let's click on cell B9, for example, okay? And what you'll see is it equals the sum of C9 through H19. And if I click up here in the formula bar, okay, it will show me it will show me the cells, okay? And that's C9, and you'll see it's these sums, and I get a visual indicator that tells me this is what you're working with. That's that little blue line. Now you and I look at this and we take it for granted, but look, the people who design these things, Microsoft has, I think, about 3,000 or 4,000, maybe 5,000 full-time people who do nothing but work on this product. This is a marvel. I want you to see that millions of lines of code to make this thing so seamless and so easily for us, so easy for intuitive for us to work with. It's not a lot different than you take a pilot, and he probably right now, at this moment, somewhere in the world, there's probably somebody in the United States Air Force, Navy, who's in a 40, in a 200 or 400 million dollar airplane that's looking at all kinds of gauges and flying that thing, and behind that is an incredible amount of technology. It took hundreds of thousands of people to put together. Okay, same thing here, but just on a different scale. And so I can see that I've got that sum. Now, I've got that percentage, okay? And that's the sum of these percentages. And we'll click here, just this one, and we'll see that it's C8 divided by B8. Now, this gives me an occasion to talk about cell referencing. And for those of you who don't work too much with Excel, the notion of cell referencing is very important. When I put a dollar sign in front of a letter, which stands for column, or a dollar sign in front of a number, which stands for the row, I'm using what we call the bottom of this equation uses a full absolute cell reference. It's pinned at that particular cell for that row and for that column. It's anchored there. On the top, we have what we call a fully relative cell reference, where we have it's not tied to a row or a column. Okay, and so we could see that accounting students make up 16.7%. We could round that if we want, but we've decided for convention purposes to go ahead and to use a percentage where we go out 2 decimal places. Now, is it really necessary? I don't know. You could bring these down to 16.7. You could round them. I don't think you're really dealing with numbers large enough to care. Okay, and frankly, if it was me, I probably would bring them out to 1 decimal. I might not even go out to a different percent. I might even get rid of any of the decimals. And I'll show you how I'm going to click right here, and I'll come up to, I'll click on cell 9, and I'm going to come up here to percentage, and you'll see I can decrease or increase the decimal. Okay, the only question for me is visual acuity. That is, does it take up too much screen? And the one problem with this workbook, as good as it is the issue of visual acuity, and that is I've got a lot of stuff crammed on here, but that's okay because we're looking at supporting data. So let's look at the student count. We'll click on that, and here's where we run into that count function. Okay. And I'm going to copy that because I want to again to reinforce it for us. And I'll get rid of this. That's the invitation to everybody tonight. And this is maybe a little easier to see, I hope. Let me go ahead and give you some bigger font. And we'll change that font for just a minute, and we'll bring it up to 20, you can see. Now, this is using the count if response, and this is what we call a Boolean function where it's yes or no. And we're going to look, we're going to equal count if response, which means that response with the exclamation point is we're referring back to another worksheet. Here's the worksheet, the response worksheet. Okay, and we're going to go in and check from this array or table B52 down to B153. Okay, that's the table or the array that we're working with. So as I said before, we're already using this spreadsheet like a database, and we're kind of running a query here, if you will. We really are. And so we have a set of cells in that response worksheet that's B52 to B153. That's the data table or the array. And if it has a 1, boom, we count it. Why? Because that's section 1. That's really all there is to it. Now, the count if. So we're counting it only if it meets a particular condition. Okay. And there's lots of information out there about how to use the count if function. It's a very, very nice function. And this is, and so we get the collection, we get that number there. Okay. And we'll go back here. We're back in the summary. And I'll just click escape. That's it. Now here's the accounting one, and this one's a little bit different. Okay. And this takes us to the count if s function. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to open up my trusty WordPad, and we'll take a look at this. Now notice the difference. This time we're looking for multiple conditions, not just one, but multiple conditions. In other words, we're adding in 2 factors or dimensions that we're interested in. And we're going to count if s response. We're using the response worksheet. Okay. And this time we're using the array C52 to C153. So now we're looking at everything in row C, starting at column C, excuse me, starting at row 52 all the way down to row 153. And then and then we're going to go to the summary sheet and look at C2 in the summary sheet, which is up here, which C2 in the summary sheet, and you'll see it right here, is accounting. And so we're saying if it has that, if it matches, okay, then we'll go back to the response sheet, and if we find a 1, so what we're saying is if it meets these 2 conditions, it's an accounting major, and it's one in the first section, we count it. That's what it's saying in plain English. Okay, and here we are. And we just click that, and boom. And we have 3 people. It's the same thing. Now this algorithm is just repeated. Okay, for the econ. And notice that for up here it's D2 econ, and then we're going to see E2, that's finance. We're going to see F2, which is management. We're going to see G2, which is MIS. Notice we keep moving through these rows and columns, and that's how we get a count for each of them. Okay, we just changed the criterion. Okay, in terms of we changed the criterion. The criterion that changed was here in the summary sheet. Was it C2? Was it D2? Was it E2? Well, we were looking for everybody. If I come down to section 2, I'm going to see the same thing, pattern repeated, except the last thing will be a 2. If I come down here, the last thing will be a 3. The last condition of 4, and then a 5. Okay. Now, this is important because this is one of the, at the start of the course, we talked about data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Information is data that's usable for decision making. Knowledge is information that is reusable and replicable. Okay? This is knowledge right here, because I can replicate it. Now I tweak it a little bit, but I have an algorithm. The algorithm is I go to a particular worksheet, the response worksheet, okay? I go down a particular column. If I find a particular word, and if it meets my particular section, I count it. I just put in the major and the section, and boom, I've got my answer. This is no different than here's an easy algorithm. Today is Monday, August 22nd. Today, wow, am I out of it? Today is Tuesday. My apologies. Tuesday, August 22nd. I'll bet you anything you can tell me what the date will be a week from today. Well, it's simple. You'll add 7 days. It'll be Tuesday, August 29th. You have an algorithm. Good IT lets us identify algorithms. For example, at what time of day do people come to my store? At what time of day are people buying stuff at my website or just looking around? At what time of day do my customers seem to want to have their stuff delivered? And on and on and on. It helps us identify these algorithms, and we use that concept of an algorithm when we build a dashboard like this here. Well, we've gone through that, we've worked through those counts, and now we have these, percentages accounted for by each of these, the percentages accounted for by each of the majors, all right? Now we could do a little bit of work here. For a minute, we're going to do it. I'm going to put my cursor on C9, and I'm going to scroll. I'm going to highlight all the way over to H9, okay? And I'm going to click on conditional formatting, and I'm going to use the color scales. I'm going to use a gradient. Now this gradient says, okay, green is the best, and it's in shades. It's a color scale. Green is good, and then a lighter green is a little, and then a yellow kind of in the middle, and then it moves to more of a kind of an orange, and then the red, the deep red, is really bad. So I can look here right now, and I can say, okay, looking at just the distribution of majors, okay, in terms of their count, who participated in this, I don't have to be all that hot and bothered about it. And I'll apply that. And I have, now I can look. Now I didn't have to do much in the way of charting or anything. And this is why I like conditional formatting in Excel. It's so nice. It really does help you. Now if I'm interested in something, rather, if I want to know about, if I'm interested, let me put it like this. If lower is better, okay, then I would use this scale, the red, yellow, green, as opposed to green, yellow, red. Or if red is dangerous, and I'm concerned about it, and I want to be alerted to that, that's my priority. Because really what I'm doing here with these colors is I'm putting them in priorities, or I'm creating what I would call an ordinal. I'm turning them into ordinal data, okay? Greater than, lesser than, lesser than, lesser than, lesser than. Do I care the percentages of people, students, and do I care what percentage of majors took this? Yes, because it may be that in their, that the particular set of majors in their coursework, maybe they're better prepared. This is what I'm concerned about, okay? Now, I'm going to come back up here on the conditional formatting, and I'm going to clear the rules from the selected cells, and I'm good. I'll have to highlight it first. And highlighted, I'll go down here to clear the rules from the selected cells, but you say, could we do the same thing over here with the numbers of students in the classes? Yes, although I don't know. See, we have a fairly small number, and we have such a divergence. And let's take a look at this for just a minute. We got almost half of them are sophomores. Then the next group are freshmen. Then the next group are juniors, and the smallest number are seniors. Okay, do we care about that? Well, they want to collect the data on the basis of that. So, okay, well, let's look up here in the freshmen. Let's look at the conditional statement that's up there, and it's interesting. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that because this is where we look for the freshmen. And we're looking for freshmen in the first section. And this, I'm going to do a count if. So if both conditions are met, I count it. So notice I'm back down in the response sheet and see my algorithm. This time I'm working in column D, rows 52 to 153. Then I'm going to come back to summary, and summary I2 freshman. That's my criterion. And then I look at the response sheet, B52 to 153, to find out what section they're in, and that condition is 1. So if that meets the condition that it is a freshman in section 1, we count it. And that's that's all we've done it. And then that same process, okay, we go ahead and we get the total, and then we compute the percentages. Okay, because we may wonder, okay, does this have something to do with what class you're in? You say, well, why would that matter? Well, I've been in the university in this industry for a long time, and I can tell you that high schools are not all alike. Some high schools are very good. Other high schools are very bad. Other high schools are kind of just in the middle. And I can tell you that the high school a kid comes from has a lot of impact when they hit college, a lot. And it stays with them. That it's the rare student who comes from well, let me say this. Sometimes there's students who come from a very small school district where they were valedictorian, and they come to school and they get blown away. There'll be those who come from a large, really good district where maybe they were one of the best students, but they do very well. And I've also seen those students who are just, no matter where they came from, they just hit college, they matured, and they flowered, and they did very well, or just the opposite. But you can see, again, we've got that algorithm built. This is a nice little worksheet. And now we'll go down here, and we've got correct responses by major, because that's one of the information specifications. Okay, so pop back over here. And we've got the equals the response on correct responses, and we'll go down into this is on the response worksheet, and it equals C19. Okay, now we're going to come down to the response. Okay, and if it equals C19, okay, we're just using a simple cell reference. And if we go down to the response worksheet and we come down to C19, we're going to find that this tells us how many students got that information correct. Okay, so we'll go back up here to the summary and notice what's going on. This is, we're using a cell reference. Here's the, okay, here's the display. And then below that, okay, we go down to, and this is this notion of a value chain, where we take a set of data and we add value. And what we're doing is we've added value up the line by eventually ending up with the correct responses by major. First of all, we display them, and it refers back to this response, C19. Okay? And in the response sheet, we'll look at C19, there's 12. And how did we get to 12? Well, here's where the fun begins. Typically what will happen is we go down, as you dig down deeper, you get more and more, things get more and more complex. This is not a lot different, because when we go in where we work with Access, you're going to see that you'll be able to look at query in what we call the graphic user interface, and we'll also see, you can go down and look at the code itself. It just, the level of complexity just changes. So let's see, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna copy that, and then we'll put it here in the notepad. I'm probably doing it already, didn't even think about it. And here we are. Okay, now we're to count if it meets these two criteria. E52 to E153, that's part of the array, that column E, rows 52 to 153. Does it meet B13? Okay, and we'll go back up, and B13 is the correct answer, A. You can see where I have my cursor. Okay, and then we're going to go back to C52, C153, okay, and then if it matches A3, if it meets both those conditions, we count it. And I'll bet you anything that A3 has something to do with the major. And we'll go back up to the summary sheet. And there we are. You can see how this thing is put together. And this is just a repeat of more of the same. If you look over by the incorrect responses, use the same technique. And remember, the correct responses are over there on page 68. Okay? And I want you to see this. I'm a firm believer that that you learn with this stuff. You learn by doing, and having a template to work with and play with, I think is good. And I want you to download the file and upload it for the workshop credit. Or I think you'll get some values if you play around with it on your own and you get some time, mess with it, and just see what you get. You're not going to break it. Okay, and if you really get worried about it, make copies of the file, and and then just play with the copies. Okay, I think you'll learn. I think you'll figure out. Listen, there's so many resources out there. First of all, I want to say this: the Green Book, the Miller Book, is really excellent. Okay, because it walks you through a lot of process. But there's a lot of stuff out there, as I've said before, on YouTube. There's stuff out there at Microsoft Office that shows you how to do these things, and for you to tailor it to your own particular needs. So here we are. This time we're looking for the incorrect responses, and we just follow that same pattern. It says equals C20. Notice over here is equals C19, equals C20. Okay? And then if we go down to the response and go down to C20, and we'll come over to C20, we're going to see incorrect. And notice this is a little bit different because we took equal B3 minus C19. B3, okay, is the number of correct responses. I'll go up here to B3 minus C19. So what we did is we performed an operation here where we took the number of correct responses, okay, and that's what's there in B3, and we subtracted C19, which is highlighted in the green, and that gives us the number of incorrect. So we added some value. Once I knew the correct responses, all I had to do was to get the if I know the correct responses, okay, I'll go back up here again, we'll click on it. B13, pardon me, B3, I know the number, on B3, pardon me, I have the count, excuse me. I know how many responses I had, I'm sorry. And then on C19, okay, I have the number of incorrect. So if I know the number of responses, okay, and then I know the number of correct responses, then I know the number of incorrect responses. And see how I took this and then simplified down, and then I got the percentage required. So you'll see how we've done this value-added process. Information is like any other stuff. We add value to it, okay, by adding to it or subtracting from it. A diamond. A diamond is mined from somewhere. It's brought, it's cut down, okay? It's refined, it's cut, it's polished, and then it's presented on a ring or in a bracelet or whatever. Information is the same thing. We add stuff or we subtract stuff, okay, and then we display it. It's a value chain, okay, and that's why we talk about that. Now, you know, the thing about this is if I look at just this workbook, let's say this is the workbook for last year, and then I give everybody the same quizzes. Let's say it was for last quarter. The case gives you some details. It doesn't matter. But the point is, I could use this, okay, as a what? A baseline. Then develop a longitudinal study from it and really add value to it. That's why, except for people, information is the most valuable resource a company can have. We can see how this is built here. And the question analysis, how many correct answers and how many correct responses, what the correct answers were, the correct responses and the incorrect responses, and then the totals, and away we go. Now we're into that part I want to talk about, and I've mentioned before, is looking for patterns, okay? And I want to scroll this back up for a minute, okay? I want to focus on this one array over here where I look at the question, where I look at correct and incorrect. Here's what I've got going on in this array, starting at A18 all the way down to M, what is that, 48, this whole array. Okay. I'm looking for patterns, all right? I'm going to start by doing, this is just me, I start by looking vertically. When I like traditional formatting. Number one, I'm a mapping junkie. Number two, I'm a lazy slug. And I could do a chart, but I'm not going to get the same clarity as I do with this, okay? And notice I'm going to look down. Okay, if I'm looking down, so okay, are there a lot of red cells over in accounting? Well, no. Are there a lot of red cells in econ? Well, there's more of them. Are there a lot of red cells in finance? Well, yeah. Management, not too many. Marketing, not too many. And I've stopped right here because I have the total by major. Now I start looking across, and I see, uh-oh, here's a question. I've got a lot of red cells. Question number 4 seems to have vexed 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 6 majors. In other words, they were below 70% correct. 70% of them who got it correct. So question 4 is on my radar, okay? I'm going to scroll on down here, and I'd say, well, there's 2 for question 6. There's 2 for question 2, 2 for question 1. So the one that's really on my thought, that's on my mind, is question 4, as far as majors. Now I want to come over to class. And I've got freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So I'm going to look down. I'm going to do a vertical scan. Yeah, no. I'm going to do a horizontal scan. 2, there's 1, 2. Not much. So I'm not getting much, okay, when I've looked at major and I've looked by class. But now, okay, I have my little analytical cube. I'm going to look at both. I'm going to look at both by looking all the way down, okay? And I'm not going to get much in terms of what's relevant is the question. The question is the hinge where major and class meet. Major is what we call a slowly changing dimension. They're in a particular major, okay? Their class is what we call a slowly changing dimension. That's their class standing. So their major and their class standing, 2 variables, ought to tell me a lot about them. Let's see if it does. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look and I see, first of all, question 2. I've got quite a few red squares. I've got 2 and coming across, I got 2 here. I got 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So I have right now some questions I want to target. And obviously I would want to target, I would want to maybe target question. I certainly want to target question 2 because it seems regardless of their major or their class standing, we're not hitting that goal of 70%. Same thing for question 4. So I've got these 2 questions, and question 6. So questions 2, 4, and 6 need to be looked at because I'm seeing I'm seeing that by major and by class, Okay, they're not meeting that performance standard. Okay, so that's something I would want to make a note. But you can see now how I'm kind of using this conditional formatting to map this all out. And this shows you the student responses. Here's our array of data, our data table that shows you what we pulled everything from. And just like I would pull data out of the table and run a query, and we'll be doing some of that. Same story here. So that shows us the response. Now, if you take a look over at page 69, at the bottom of page 69 in your book, you're going to see that they talk a lot, that they give you the information specifications. This is a fancy way of saying, here's a series of queries or questions that we're looking for to see if the data give us any indication. Overall, which major students answered the most questions correctly? Okay. Which major students answered the least number of questions correctly? Okay. Okay, who's doing really good, who's not doing so good? Which students answered the questions correctly? And which sections students answered? So we're going to sections, and then which classification? We're looking at classes. So you see those dimensions. How do freshman economics majors do compared to freshman MIS majors? So we want to compare these two majors for some reason. And then for final, I want to prepare a chart. That's where things get sketchy. Well, the rest of this exercise really involves us doing this. So let's click on the next tab here. This is the correct response chart. Okay. And so, okay, now Dr. Harmon, you've groused and complained and bellyached about charting a lot. Yes. Charting in me, look, I just intuitively, I'm not really, I have to work at it really hard, okay? And like I said, I'm a lazy slug, and I don't like to work hard. So let's look at this thing and take it apart. Here's the correct response comparison chart, and this compares them by major. The majors are color-coded, obviously, and then we have a chart. Now, a couple of things about this. First of all, you cannot trust that this chart shows you a true graphic representation, meaning that the space on this chart accounted for, the pixels that the length of the pixels of 100% to 50% are the same. You cannot count on that. Don't. Okay? Which is why you want to make sure that you don't exaggerate the chart, because you can compress it, you can stretch it. And another issue that you run into is this. You have these 7 majors and you've got 10 questions. So you have 70 data points. Now, if you send the file with somebody, they can put the cursor and it'll give them a little pop out and it will tell them. Frankly, if you put the data call outs on all of them, you'll have a cluttered mess. But this is a nice thing, okay, that takes the display. Now, you remember I talked about this notion of display? Well, here's a display, and it shows us the series MIS point Q1, the value is 95.41. So on question 1, 95.4%, I can see the same thing here for marketing. The same thing for finance. Here's econ, kind of hidden there, and here's accounting. Now, if I were going to do anything with this chart, what I might do would be to try to stretch the thing out if I could possibly do it. Okay, I might be able to do that, might not. But I've got 70 data points. That's a lot. Now, if I want to deconstruct this chart, I can look at the top and I can see, first of all, it's showing me style 2. Okay, in a bar chart. Here's some other different layouts if I wanted to choose them. This is probably the sanest of all of them, and I'm using different color. This uses a gradient, and that's suicidal. You want this because you've got so many different types of, we have 7 different majors. The others are gradient. So if I was looking at temperature, okay, maybe at times of day, I might stick with one of these unit colored charts because it just makes sense. Notice up here at the top, chart tools is hot. Okay, now I can click here in the chart and I can click select data, and that will tell me where the data are pulled from. It will show me the legend series. That's everything that's on the y-axis, and then here's everything on the x-axis, the categorical axis. Boom. And so I've got that. If I want to format this, I can click. I can add guidelines. I can format the grid lines. I can select the data for that y-axis. Ditto the x-axis. That's why I said before, make copies of this work and play with it. You're not going to break it. You're not going to break it. Okay. But I think it will be of use to you, and it'll be some use to try some of the different chart layouts. Now, let me say this. It just takes you some time and experience to figure out what's the best way to display these data. There are some people who would take this and try to make it a horizontal bar chart, and let me say that's suicidal. I think this one is tough enough because you're working with such a large. You're working with 70 data points. It's a lot. Now, I'm going to try to scrunch this out just a bit. You can see I'm not getting anywhere. In fact, I've just, if you mess up, come up here to the top and undo it. This is not too bad a chart. The only thing it's missing is the title. Okay, and you could add a chart title. And we can pretty much tell these are by quarter, these are percentages, and we might want to add, you might want to add a chart title to this. If you want to do that, you can click up here on a layout. Yeah, then add your chart title. You can do a center overlay, whatever's going to work for you. Lots of data points here. Yeah, as I said before, starts to get crowded, but thankfully you can put your cursor on, and you know, you might even want to look at the format back to the design. There are some people who would say, well, and you've got some design choices. Got this layout, or you could put the data below. Yeah, we'll look at this so you can see. So that doesn't do a lot for you. It lets you put an axis. It lets you put on an axis titles a little bit easier, and it gives you all these smaller lines. And I hate that because I think it junks everything out. This is about as clean and clear as you're going to get with 70 data points. Okay, so this is a correct response comparison chart by question. Okay, and you can kind of see. And what I would say is, okay, is there a color? First, again, I look for the highs and lows. Is there a color here which signifies a major that tends to be higher than everybody? And I see up here. Okay, now it's easy. You can easily confuse accounting with MIS, so you got to be careful. That's why you want to use the call out. Okay, on question 2, here we are again. Here's question 3. Here we go again. The MIS students are doing very well. Here's the infamous question 4 that befuddled everybody. The MIS came through. Uh-oh. Here's one where the management people did very well versus MIS, not by much. Come back here to this question. And again, the MIS students doing very well, as they should. Here's MIS. They slid down in here. This time it's management. They slacked off here in question 9 and in question 10. Okay, so that gives us a flavor of that. Now, we've got the major count chart, and I told you before how much I hate pie charts. They're deceptive. Yeah, I mean, it's nice if you just want to show everybody a circle with different colors. But if everybody thinks that this actually shows proportions in space, you're kidding yourself. One of the criticisms of Excel is that it doesn't give you a true rendering of the pixelation. And hey, who cares? I don't care if I have the data that tell me, and they also try to build in kind of a thermal here. Okay, there you go. I would have another choice if you want to. You do out 7. That's no good, and we'll just walk it back to where it was. I guess for my money, I'd rather have a bar chart. Okay, now I'm going to click on layout. Pardon me. I mean on format, design, and I'm going to look at change series chart type. I'm going to click on it for a minute, and let's just see what it looks like if I put it in a bar chart. Not bad. I like this better. Why? Well, it's cleaner. Okay, it shows me percentages. Now, if I want, I can go ahead and I can add. I can add this. I go ahead and add the data. I could do a little bit of formatting with them, but I want to I go in here and select the data. Pardon me, I'm sorry. I want to add the data and format the data labels, series name, the value. I'm going to put it on the outside end. Let's see what I get here. Not doing much for me, is it? Well, that's, as you said before, you know, that's me with a table. We've got the data there. I probably would have to just go ahead and select it back. But again, let's click on the layout, pardon me, on design. Layout design here. Change the chart type. And I'm going to take it back to a bar chart. And then if I'm all that worried, I can always put the cursor on it and it will give me the counts. I like this better. I think it's cleaner, but you know, we want to see percentages. There we go. Now, the one thing I am going to change this is to a green. Why? That's because this is OBU and green and gold are our colors. Let's see if they have a gold that would look good. I'm being, you know, that's more of an orange, so we'll want to stick with the green. Black, it's OBU. What can I say, my friends? Okay. Now we're going to see the class chart. Same thing here, and I'm going to make it a green for OBU. Okay. And so we've got the major count. We've got the count by class, the number, and then the percentage. Again, change the chart type. I could put it in a nice bar chart. And there we are. Now that's pretty. That gives me the number, but doesn't give me percentages. But I think it's easy to see. Freshmen, sophomores are the biggest number of students. Sophomores represent the largest number of students that took it. So that worked out well. Let's go back here to the major comparison. I'm going to change the chart type. Do that bar chart. And what? Ah, it worked. I'm a genius. You said, Dr. Harmon, you spend too much time with Excel charts. I probably do, my friends. Well, here's the result of a pivot table, and here we were looking at the sum total, which major got the most, got the highest number of correct answers. And as you can tell, here we are. I'll click on this, and then we want to go over here on the and click on data, and I want to show the groupings. Okay. and this is one thing that always vexes me, is on the design, probably the options. There we go. I want to see the field and have it show me the fields. It's got the headers, but it's not. This drives me crazy. And probably some of you are sitting out there laughing at me. I don't blame you. But I can see I've got the power pivot tool on here, options, field list, there it is. There we go. I finally figured it out, the field list. My apologies. But you can see we put the row labels of the majors and the sum is the total correct. If I want, I can click on that. Right here, and I can change the value field settings, and instead of a sum, I could get a percentage. I'll find a percentage or the average. And then I can just back out of it. Okay. And I can mix or match here, but this is it gives me a nice output. About the only thing I might do is go ahead and then click home and put in some borders. But I've got them arranged, as you can see, in an auto sort largest to the smallest. Now, if I want the percentages, it's simple. I just do this. Give me the percentage, and I'll just carry it on down. No, I won't. I'm going to have to go in there and change each of these to give me A3. Yeah, because it's giving me yeah. So I'd have to go and do the change on them. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy all of these, okay? And then I'm going to put them, and I'm going to paste special, and I'm just going to paste the values. Okay, and then I'll get the percentage. It'll be easy. And I'll just make this a fully absolute. F4. I want to do that. I'm getting ahead of myself. F4. Divided by. Now I'm going to put a dollar sign in front of the F because I'm going to come down the column. Divided by. All right, equal F4 divided by F10. And I'm going to make F10 a fully absolute reference. And I did that by clicking on the function for here on my keyboard. I've got a Windows machine. And then I'll just bring it down. I'll get a total, make sure I got 100% at 1. And I'll increase the decimals on it. And then I'll decrease these down to something workable. And then I can change them to a percent style, these here. Same thing there. And there I can see, and then I'll just copy those. From here, I'll paste the values, boom, and I put in a little bit of, I'll bulb those up, and I have percentage data. Okay. I did a little bit of work there, but not a big deal. But I've got the total correct, and I've got percentages. Now, I can see, that I've got some differences between these. A big gap, not that much of a gap here. but it gets bigger as we go on down to the finance, where the MIS is almost twice as big. And so we start to talk about that. Okay, well, we know the most questions correct. Okay, and here's for information spec number 3. That is which students answered the questions. Which student got the most correct? Well, it's obvious. You only have 10 questions, and you have a number of students who got the questions totally correct. It's okay, well, what value is there in knowing that? Well, here's the value. Here's what I'm interested in, these two variables. Okay? And I'm looking for combinations. And I'm looking for, I've got 1, 2, 3, and I could build a little chart here, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 students who are MIS, okay? And then I've got 1, 2 who are sophomores. So I've got 1 freshman, 1 junior, and 2 sophomores. That's the 4 MIS majors. So what I'm seeing is they're spread throughout the program, freshmen, junior, and sophomores. Okay, so that's telling me something about these MIS students. And I've got the econ, one's junior, one's freshman. Okay, now I might want to, let's play with this just a little bit for a second. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all this. All right, I'm going to highlight these data. Let's get rid of this yellow. We'll go back in here and we'll get rid of and turn that back to no fill. And then I'm going to take and I'm going to highlight A1 down to E12. I'm going to come over here to sort and filter. I'm going to do a custom sort. Okay. And I'm going to I'm going to do a custom sort, and I'm going to sort by, and make sure I have clicked, my data has headers. Make sure you do that. And then I'm going to sort by, let's see, column C. And so that's kind of the problem I have. I've got this mixed set of data. Let's cancel this out for a minute. I'm going to highlight these. Oh, here's my problem. Come over here, folks. Here's the problem. I messed this up. Come to A2 and highlight A2 all the way down to E12. Now I think we're cooking. So we'll highlight A2 to E12. And I'm going to click on sort and filter, and there I'll do a custom sort. And I'll put my data has headers. There we go. Now I'm going to sort them by major. And on values. And that will be Z to A. And let's see. No, because that's not going to help me. Because everybody's at 10. Let's do this. Let's highlight it again. Let's do sort and filter. After this, a little bit of work here. And my data has headers, and I want to sort by classification, by major, okay? And then I want to add a level, and then by classification. Let's see what that looks like. And no, because we got the econ, so we'll just back out of that. So we'll get rid of that. This is why now this is one of the perils of working in what we call a flat sheet environment, where here, you know, I'm looking at the the student responses, and I'm trying to make some sense of them. Now this is okay because I don't have that many cases, but if I'm really wanting to see if a particular major and classification is a winning combination, if you will, I'm kind of concerned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight A2 to E12, and I'm going to insert a pivot table. Okay, and I'm going to have it, and I'm going to put it into a new worksheet. All right. Now I'm going to put the classification into the column, and I'm going to put the major into the rows, and then I'm going to put the number correct. Now I can maybe do a little bit of work with this. Now I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to click home. I'm going to highlight those, and then I'm going to use conditional formatting. Okay, and I'm just going, and I'm going to take the number correct, and I'm going to look at, well, I can just do it here. And this is going to show me I've got, what this shows me is I've got freshmen and sophomores who account for the largest number. Now, I'm going to go ahead, and I'm doing a little bit of work here, but again, this shows you one of the issues we run into when we work in a flat sheet environment. And you may have a solution around that you say, oh, I can do it much better than that. You probably may, if you do good. But here I know this is the highest value. Okay, and I've got freshmen who have 20, and I'm going to come across now, and I'm going to use some conditional formatting, but a little bit different critter. I'm going to do data bars. And okay, and let's see, I'm going to do gradient bar. For these, and so I see that I had, freshmen and sophomores in MIS. That combination is the best one. Marketing, the lowest one. Econ, not too bad. Management, not too bad, but clearly I have it. The MIS students are doing better. Again, this is, we use the pivot table because we're working in a flat sheet environment. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get rid of all of any of the conditional formatting. I'm going to clear the rows from the selected cells. And I'm going to play with this for just a minute. And I'm going to take classification and put them down here with the majors. Okay. This starts to give us maybe a clearer picture, if you will, because I can see that in MIS I have 3 classifications that did well. In Econ I had 2, Management 2, Marketing 1. You could see that if I go ahead and build in, well, let's build in the And to keep from having any confusion, I might go ahead and for econ, I might go ahead and give it a fill. Let's give it a blue. Let's give it a darkish for our friends, the economists who are part of the dismal science. I'm going to color these two, and I'll make the red. This management, I don't know why these two are coming up. I'm going to make that yellow. And it's also yellow. And then marketing, I'll make that a green. That makes it a little more, that makes it easier to see, okay? In fact, then this also should be red. So we can see we're doing a little formatting here, and the freshman. Management is, this management should also be yellow. I'm going to make those instead of I'm going to do this. I'm going to come in and make them, take the bold off and make them just strictly italics. Just a little formatting, makes it a little easier to comprehend. There we go. Now that's nicely done. Now I can see in the MIS. I want to make sure that that's also should be that. There we go. Now, let's see, I can do this. I'm going to format these up to 12 so they're a little more comprehensible. You say you're doing a lot of playing around with the format. Yes, I am. Again, ultimately, this is for an end user, you or someone else, or you and someone else. And either way it goes, you want it to work. And there you go. Now you see that differentiation where you see the three classes for the MIS. And so you're seeing that combination. And so we've gotten a little bit more information out of it. Now the ISQ3, we looked at that. That's where we got that. ISQ4, which section had the most correct answers? Or this is ISQ4. Which students answered the most questions correctly? This looks like sections to me, and that's what it is. This is correct by section. Okay. Section 5 had the most correct answers. Although they were close, these three sections kind of clustered together. And I don't know, is there that much difference between these? These three are pretty clustered pretty tightly. Okay. This one, section 4, that's a different matter. Now, just to add some visual acuity, we'll go ahead and put these in here. And you can see there's a bit of a difference. There's about 4. And you can just do the math here. The difference is 4. I mean, the difference here is, this is -4 from the top. This is -5 from the top. This is -11 from the top. And then this is -40 from the top. You see what we did here? And then I can do some conditional formatting, use the color scales, and I can see that section 4, I've got some issues. Okay? And again, I got even more data. I extracted even more value out of the information I had here. Okay, so I said again, this idea of a value chain. I refined this a little more, polished it up a little bit, and said, okay, how far are we off from the top one? And we could see that it's This is not too bad. They're clustered pretty closely here. We're in the middle. They're not too bad. This is bad news. So section 4 is definitely in need of some attention. Finally, we're looking here at we're looking at the class by measure by the average total correct, and econ and MIS. We can see they're pretty closely aligned in terms of the average number of correct. Although, if you go back over here to sheet 1, you could see this is up and down the line. Freshmen, juniors, sophomores, their seniors aren't showing up here, but that's 3 of the 4 classes versus 2 of the 4 classes. So this one is a little deceiving, okay, in terms of the average number correct. All right. And we worked here. And this is not a question 10 where we're looking at, what's the section number and the sum by class. And here's ISQ 7. And here's that ISQ 8. Now, this is a monstrosity. And this is the nastiest, ugliest chart I've ever seen in my entire life. I hate it. First of all, because the color codes aren't, it's 1, 2, 3. I guess these are the sections. And I'm going to have to find out. I'm going to click the chart type. Pardon me. Select the data. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I've got freshmen. And this is ISQ 7. And that was for the final exam, question 10, prepare chart prepares the correct responses given by different classifications across board. So they looked at question number 10, and they wanted to get the number correct. So I've got the section number, the classification, and that's ISQ 7. That's at the top of page 70. For final question, exam question 10, prepare a chart that contains the correct responses. They're concerned about question number 10. The correct response is given by different classes, so it's classes by section. So you've got the question. So this is what we would call that, again, that data, the analytic cube. We got 3 slices here. By section, okay, by classification, okay, and whether it was correct or not. And this is decent. It shows you the freshmen, but this chart would need it'd need a title that really telegraphs what I'm looking at. This axis is okay. This is correct responses, but it needs a chart title to telegraph what you're looking at. And that's the ISQ 7 chart. Okay? And that would be pretty much the run of it. Well, folks, listen, it's, by my clock, it's 7:53. We've gone 1 hour and 53 minutes, roughly nearly 2 hours. And this is the file that you'll want to upload. I'm going to close the file off here. And I'm not going to save anything. There's nothing there I want. I'm going to close this down. I'll cancel that. Lake West solution, that's the file that you want to upload. Let me go over to syllabus and show you where to upload it. Again, for your credit, it's due the 31st of August. Okay? Now, let me talk with you just a couple of minutes or so, and goodness, we've got 10 of you. Thank you so much, so many of you, for being here. I am so appreciative of you being here. I know you can just look at the recording, and I do appreciate you being here. On September 5th, we have a case follow-up, then any material left. Here's an upload. Okay, here's a file upload. Here's another file. These 3 file uploads. Okay, and and what I probably will do is we may start on another Excel case, and I'll cover it and tell you this is what to upload over here for the file uploads. This one on the MS Access and DBMS concepts, we probably, in fact, I may make all 3 of these access cases that we upload a file. I'll tell you what to upload there, okay? So don't get too wigged out about that. And then on the 5th of September, you'll just have that case follow-up. So that night of the 5th, I'll talk about what will be due on the 7th, and we'll do and I'll do that in the supplemental lab, okay, and then again the night of the 31st and the night of the 5th. So don't get too worried about this, okay, folks. Listen, I do appreciate your time, and I know that you've worked very, very, very hard. I'm trying to kill a fly in here. That's what's going on, and that's what the clapping's all about. I'm not giving myself self-applause. But I do want to thank you for being here. And again, if you have any questions, you know, I'm happy to try to entertain them. And in fact, I'm going to throw my, now if you have a mic, you can send me a question. You could ask me a question if you have one. So I'm going to open this up for just a second. And I'm going to see if there's anybody that has a mic that would, anybody that wants to have a question? Anybody? And I'll check to see. See, I've got some folks on the phone. I've got Dylan. Dylan, if you have, let me unmute you for a minute. I think Dylan disappeared on me.
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay, Dylan, any questions I can help you with?
I think I'm following along pretty good.
Okay, Nancy, how about you?
No questions.
Okay, I'm going through the list of folks that look like they have. Simon, how about you? Any questions? I'll mute Simon here for a minute. And Zach, any questions?
No questions.
Okay. Okay, folks, you do know if you have a question, you're always welcome to send me an email and I'll try to answer it for you. Or if you want, you know, you can always send me an email and try to set up a time. I haven't done any office hours because I really haven't gotten a sense that you wanted them or needed them. But you do know, if you were to say, could I have some time with you, you know, tomorrow night or whatever, if I'm getting ready to start fall undergrad, so I've got 2 nights of the week I'm filled up, Mondays and Thursdays. But I could try to set a time with you to do a video conference and maybe a screen share if you would want or need some help. But again, thank you so very much for being here. And I'm looking forward to your case responses. In fact, one of the things I will do next week is I'll take a look at the case follow-ups and see how everybody's done. I'm always curious about that. But thank you for being here. And folks, I will end this, and then tomorrow I'll do a supplemental lab and a supplemental lecture, and that'll get us our 4 hours of instruction. So keep up the great work. I really appreciate it. You're doing very well. And I hope this is of some benefit and help to you. And again, have a good evening. And I'm going to pause this share. And then I'm going to stop the recording and we'll be done. Thanks a lot, folks. Have a good one.